upgraded team on the grid, Haas, at least to my knowledge. And if you know of a different team, then you could bring them up. Haas, to my knowledge, has been one of the teams to do the fewest. I think Williams has been one of the teams at one point in time to bring the most upgrades at one GP. I think the count might have been 12 to 15 upgrades at one GP. McLaren, to my knowledge, probably comes in 7 this last race. I think they might have bought it in like 7 to 9 or 7 to 8. Mm-hmm. Haas, like they've been messing around with this front end plate for like the last month or so with this little nuance.
The dive plane.
Yeah. So Gunther seems to say that the pace is good. Therefore, that is why they haven't bought any upgrades to this point in time. Is it because the pace is good or the pay ain't good as far as the financial ability of Haas being able to upgrade this many amount of times as other teams? And even if they do bring these upgrades, what do you foresee it doing for Haas? Because to me, Haas has done pretty well this season in comparison to past seasons. So I've been pretty pleased with Haas. But what do you say? What do you think?
We have this sort of naive perception about what upgrades actually are. Right. In fact, using the language upgrade presupposes that they're effective, right?
Right.
As far as Mother Nature is concerned, all these are changes. Correct. They're just changes. It's just a different geometry than you had before. Whether or not it's actually an improvement has to do with correlation. You've done your wind tunnel work. You've done your CFD work. They tell you this should be faster, but at the end of the day, you have to run it on an actual track with actual wind conditions and actual drivers, and it may not actually be faster in reality. So sometimes teams find, and I think Gunther is of this same mindset. Sometimes teams find that it's more important to have very, very impactful upgrades than a lot of them, number one. And number two, there's a lot of time to be found just in maximizing the performance of your car every weekend. Because if you build a car that has a very high theoretical performance, but it's very peaky, it's not very high, a little bit off that perfect design window, that's not as good. That's not as good as something that's a little bit more robust. So I think that they've been focusing more on maximizing the setup of their car and making sure that they actually can get 10/10ths out of it, every weekend, than actually giving the upgrades that we're describing before as far as body work and stuff. But the point that you said before is also true. The money isn't infinite, right? I mean, they don't have an infinite amount of money to pay for this stuff. And we've had some very, very big crashes. I mean, if you think back to Mick Schumacher's crash in Jeddah, that was a completely new chassis, basically. Right. I mean, there was a lot of things that needed to be changed on that car to be able to go moving forward. So the more crashes you have, the more money that takes out of your development budget. And they are just making the decision that it's much better to have a few upgrades that are very effective than anything else. Now, that being said, we do have, I believe, direct confirmation at this point that Haas is bringing the upgrade this weekend. Okay. No, it is the upgrade because they haven't really had a huge upgrade at any other point, as we mentioned previously, but also it's going to be big. And I'm told that it will be visible. You will be able to look at it immediately and say, okay, that's the new one. And that's the old one.
That's the old one. Okay.
And there's some rumblings that it may be more like the Ferrari design. And as I've kind of mentioned before, we haven't seen many teams truly try to replicate the Ferrari bathtub sort of design. We've seen some teams use the same similar style inlet. We've seen some teams, do some other, tricks around it. But we haven't. You
don't think Alpine kind of?
I think Alpine kind of has, but it doesn't have the same sort of rolling curvature that the Ferrari does. And it uses the louvers in the side pod very differently than Ferrari does. No matter what we have, there's nothing as extreme as the Ferrari was. Even if other ones are close to it, there's nothing as quite as extreme.
Are you about to think that the white Ferrari is about to unveil itself?
I think we're about to see something closer to a white Ferrari than we've seen in the past. I don't think it's going to be quite the same level as like the RP20 from Racing Point, Pink Mercedes. It's literally like reverse engineered with photogrammetry software to be the same. I don't think it's going to be quite like that, but I do think it will be a really big upgrade. Okay. And given their pace that they've already had, I do think they actually could be very competitive going forward. So I'm curious to see it.
Thanks for watching another episode of Wolfpack Performance. Don't forget to check out some of my other content on Formula One and motorsports topics. Like, share, subscribe, and we go live on the weekends. See you soon.